Hi there, welcome to a very important video on the Kenny Veach case. A new strange finding has come about, and it's in regard to the website eBay. Shout out credit to the viewer out there for picking up on it. Today, I want to share my thoughts, opinions, and analysis, and furthermore, some additional research which might shock you. On the surface level, it can come across as a bit of a coincidence, but then on a deeper level, there are possibilities for a link to suggest Kenny Veach is alive and possibly making money in other ways because of the themes, the items, and in general, there is a bit of a crossover and even a link to his house, his tour video, how he described himself. To make things clearer, I will do so in just a second. But first of all, I'd like to say welcome if you're currently here during this live video premiere. Share your thoughts and opinions in the live chat on the right side of the screen and at any point or time. And for those watching on catch up, feel free to let me know your thoughts, whether you're surprised, whether you believe in it or not. And if you've got any additional thoughts, theories, questions or answers, all your thoughts are welcome down below under the video in the comment section. And if you want to support my channel, down below you will find a pinned message too with a PayPal link and channel membership. Big shout out to those that have supported the channel in recent time, such as Norway Guy for the gifted memberships, very good of them, and Missing Remote for their super chat, very positive to see. If anyone wants to catch up on recent coverage with the videos that I've done, including the one last night where you should not follow certain coordinates because it can lead you into serious danger and trouble, you want to know more about that, don't worry, you'll find it available top right corner where the eye symbol is up there with the full playlist and some loose videos attached. In terms of the order of how we're going to do it today, I'm going to give you a little guide on eBay, the website, where the strange, interesting finding has come about, and then further reinforce it with additional research. This is in regard to items being sold and the name Kenny Veach being used. So is someone doing it to make money out of Kenny? Is it simply a misunderstanding, or could Kenny Veach himself be behind it all? Without further ado, let's begin. Here we are, and down below listed is an item, and at first it may not seem like much or anything special, but the theme of a belt buckle, and knowing that Kenny Veach would have worn them himself, a rustic cowboy aesthetic look, similar to how Kenny Veach described himself and made references in his video. There's some links there, but ultimately, when you go across, look what that says. Kenny Veach, maker, Webster City, Idaho, however you say it. But it says Kenny Veach. Isn't that a bit of a strange coincidence? A maker. You know, when you look at Kenny Veach's house tour video, it'll make more sense how he describes himself. Artistic, creative, a perfectionist, likes to tell a story, almost cowboy-esque, the theme. So this is kind of cowboy-esque too.
But my pack is full of fossils and dried plant life and rocks and old cans, and I bring them to my home and I clean them up and I set them around the house in a very artistic manner. One of the other things I can do, I can build just about anything I put my mind to. These curtains were from scratch. I thought of them, and then I went down to the swap meet here in Las Vegas, and I purchased these big splotches of, I call them splotches, these big pieces of pig suede leather, and they just kind of, I'll show you later on, I'll zoom in on a piece, but they were all odd looking with holes in them and stuff, and I had to cut them and shape them and get them just the way I wanted, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that I had to cut into big rectangles, and I taught myself how to sew, and I sewed them together and shaped them just the way I wanted to, and then I went down to Walmart and I got these long belts, these leather belts, and I cut them all up and I made these tie backs. Now there's 2 of these, there's one over there you'll see later on. And I made them into these leather belt tie backs, and I ordered these beautiful belt buckles on the internet, and there's two different styles, and they showed up, and so I just put those together.
Now, would Kenny Veach, outwards publicly be doing something like this if he is a so-called missing person? Of course you can question it, but just take in mind, this is me giving my thoughts, raw reaction to indirectly a viewer-requested video. So I thought I'd take the time to acknowledge it, because you never know. Everything does need to be archived, or at least documented, because something like this could disappear soon. There's always that possibility. So if I'm seeing it from different angles, and then when we scroll down here, vintage handmade Kenny Veach brown leather belt and silver buckle. Take in consideration, Kenny in his video mentioned about handmade items, what he would create or piece together from an empty small little vase and then filling it with dried leaves and vegetation from when he's gone on his hikes, to decorating his house with skulls, and even making handmade curtains for his house. All mentioned in his video. As for the seller on eBay, they're called Treasure Hunter. And the person in the background that made their observations picked up on the word hunter. Could that be a bit of a coincidence or a link to Hunter Veach, the nephew to Kenny Veach? Because when you look at Hunter and his Facebook profile, he seems to be the only one that actually acknowledges Kenny Veach and has background channel art in honour and memory of Kenny, that they've been out hiking in the past. So could they be doing it in the name of Kenny? Or could they be doing it on the sideline to try and make money from it and then pass the money on to Kenny, to live off from and more? Not just this, but other things going on in life. And now you could get some counterpoints where people say, yeah, but what about tracking and identities? Won't it come back? And if there's an active missing person case and an NAMWS database report, shouldn't all this have, been included or mentioned? Does it actually give the year or so? Because we can look at it in different ways. So one person is watching this item, only one available. The brand is called Kenny Veach and spelt the same too. Origins, United States. Vintage handmade. And it says by a leather artisan, Kenny Veach in Webster City, Iowa. Some signs of wear, but leather is solid and pliable. Compare with similar items. Well, we go on to the seller. I'm just giving you the full perspective, or as much as I can, before we go further. Joined March 2008. It's quite some time ago, before Kenny went missing. Welcome to our store. We specialise in selling vintage and hard-to-find items sourced from local thrift stores, garage sales, and estate sales. Our favourite items to include media and vintage hats. Please come back regularly as we do post new items daily. Okay. Review-wise, that'll be about different items over the last few months. What about sometimes? Let's do negative. If there's any indirect references. Will it let me? But it will be of different items, and it's not just like that one. Point positif venu avec une petite pochette de protection. Mas venu casser sous la poste de queue, mais sinon, si est un bel objet rare, son six qui vient casser. Oui, I understood all of that. Not. Right, to do with money, you have charged me $154 per my bank. As a recurring charge, the amount of transaction is $31. I'm mostly taking steps against you with eBay for fraud. I'll take this as far as I have to. Two charges do not even resemble each other. Internet is a very powerful tool that can be used to inform the entire world, man. You have intentionally and bluntly defrauded a customer of yours. You picked the wrong person to do this with. I want a full refund today. Okay, so Beside that, it's to do with a Disney classic Winnie the Pooh bookends. And speaking of Winnie the Pooh, I don't know where they've gone. They must have got lost in New Brighton, Wirral, because they've disappeared from my channel recently. Don't know if anyone else has picked up on that. Can't find them. So there's not many negative reviews, just a couple or so. Let's head back. As for most part of this, I just want to try and get onto the store if it will allow me to. Okay, treasure hunter. Now, Kenny Veach, was he a treasure hunter? In some ways, yes. What he values as treasure, other people could see as trash or just inanimate, meaningless objects. I just wanted to see what else is being sold. Genuine black leather lizard embossed belt, vintage Kenny Veach. So it's not just all to do with Kenny Veach. What it appears like is this seller has got a hold of branded items from all over the place and brought it together on a store page and then selling it off at a cheaper price. So the actual seller is likely not Kenny Veach and likely not making money for Kenny Veach. The name Hunter, though, more so Hunter as in chasing for gold, chasing for items of value, getting them for a good price and then selling them on and making a profit. But this vintage handmade Kenny Veach does stand out from the rest. So if you try and source it back to this artisan, this creator known as Kenny Veach, what results do we get? What you're now looking at on screen is some Google search results, which the use of AI mode has been used. And I just wanted to make that very clear as a heads up, because depending on how you type, you do get different results. But just by reading it here, the Kenny Veach belt can refer to two different items: a handmade vintage leather belt crafted by an artisan named Kenny Veach, and a possible clue in the disappearance of YouTuber Kenny Veach. Now, that's what I find rather unusual. I know you can't trust AI. At times mistakes can be made, but for this to refer to it as a possible clue, you know, when I searched it, I just said, what is Kenny Veach belt? And I didn't type the word clue. I didn't indicate that's what I was, suggesting or questioning. But for it to mention it here, yeah, you can argue it's kind of a clue, but is it too obvious? Depends if you used to go searching for it in the first place. But then again, you type in the person's name, you can get all kinds of search results. You got to take into consideration there are people in this world who will be called Kenny and their last name's called Veach. Some people may share one name or the surname, and other people may share both. There'll be people out there which will have my name, people out there which will have my surname. It does happen. Sometimes it could be a bit rare in certain circumstances, but there will be other people out there, just like how there can be twins or lookalikes. You think you're the only person in the world, but there is somebody else out there that looks just like you. The same can apply to names as well. But it is to refer to it as a clue. Interesting. Vintage handmade leather belt. A product made by a leather artisan named Kenny Veach, Webster City, Iowa, USA. Is that to suggest that the real Kenny Veach could be in Webster City? I mean, to be in a city with surveillance cameras and trying to start a new life, but retaining your original name, is that even possible whatsoever? Maybe not. But as said, we're giving for and against arguments just to balance it out. Material and design. It is typically a heavy tan or brown leather belt with a silver tone buckle. Condition. That vintage items may show signs of wear, but the leather is described as solid and pliable. And availability. These belts appear for sale occasionally on online marketplaces like eBay as collectors or vintage items. See, in defense, what you do have to acknowledge, beside the, artisan, the supposed creator, when you look back to the date of that eBay seller that was selling a Kenny Veach branded belt, their store and page was set up account in 2008. And if Kenny Veach was creating any items, likely it would have been maybe before Kenny disappeared. Those items could have been moved on, sold on, who knows? Kenny Veach is a creator. He might have even tried branding his own products. But of course, got to understand that risky area and grey area, the crossover between an actual brand called Kenny Veach and then Kenny himself, who may or may not be linked. If one person is trying to impersonate the other, or if one person is getting the credit compared to the other individual, it's just being careful with language and wording, so there's no copyright or anything like that which could come my way. I don't know how strict people are, but you got to be careful. So the disappearance of Kenny Veach clue. How can it be? The name Kenny Veach belt might also refer to an item talked about in online true crime forums related to the disappearance of YouTuber Kenny Veach, who vanished in the Nevada desert in 2014 while searching for a mysterious M-shaped cave. Now you could say, well, it's AI. They've already got it mixed up by referring to it as online true crime forums. That's not where the discussions come from with Kenny Veach, right? Well, there have been some exceptions besides YouTube, where there have been either it's been named True Crime, or there's a website article page called True Crime, or mainly covers true crime cases, that then did a section on Kenny Veach. You might remember it in recent time, and I said, I wonder why it's on here, or I wonder why they're referring to it as true crime when there's no evidence pointing to that. Normally, true crime is when there's a death involved, maybe even the reference to a serial killer case. A true crime example, Dylan Rounds, Noah Presgrove, Idaho 4, etc. But a mystery can apply to Jay Slater, Kenny Veach, Christine Passay Parker, missing person case, and so on. Certain cases which I'm familiar with because I covered myself, but you will get the crossover between a true crime forum and a missing person mystery. The Noah Presgrove case and Dylan Rounds, whilst they're true crime cases, at the very start or the beginning of it all opening up before knowing of a death, that was treated, or by some deemed, as a missing person case because they could not locate their friend, they could not locate their son, etc. So you can get a crossover. And it's not all down to AI making mistakes, because actual real people out there have made these cross references. Now, the context. The mention of a belt in discussions about his disappearance is often related to a separate high-profile case, the Long Island serial killer, where a belt with the letters WH was found on a victim's body. I wasn't aware of that. But I don't know why WH has anything to do with this, because it's Kenny Veach branded item. In terms of, was Kenny Veach wearing a belt or a buckle when he went out on his final hike? Not too sure. Depends what trousers, pants he was wearing at the time. Maybe it didn't need a belt. Misassociation. This appears to be a common point of confusion or misassociation amongst true crime enthusiasts. Don't know why you're mentioning that, as there is no search result suggesting a specific belt was a key clue in Kenny Veach's own disappearance. But, did he have one with him at the time? He would have had them in the house likely. I believe he was wearing one in his house tour video with his jeans. Theories. Kenny Veach's disappearance remains a mystery, with theories ranging from a wilderness accident to ending one's life, or an encounter related to nearby Area 51 military base. His phone was found near an abandoned mineshaft, but his body was never recovered. Exactly. Coins found too, which doesn't get enough acknowledgement. As I said earlier about Charlie Hunter Veach, whether it's a direct, indirect reference, coincidence to that eBay seller treasure Hunter, this is just an example of one of the few or only possible Veach-related family members that actually honours Kenny Veach by having their background channel art or profile art of Kenny from the past, which is a positive thing to see. It just makes you wonder, why don't others? Now, Charlie Hunter Veach would have had a close connection with Kenny, and one of the last few people to talk with Kenny over text on Facebook Messenger, as Kenny promised him he would be back with a surprise. And just based on that conversation, it seemed like Kenny Veach wanted to return home. So whatever happened to him out there, maybe against his will. Now, based on that theory, and something happened to him in the desert which caused him to disappear, well, then it's not going to reinforce this belt finding. Because if the belt finding was being labelled as maybe linked to Kenny making money in some way, well, then more than likely Kenny would have to be alive and still going, living a new life, but still retaining a brand or a similar name and using it to benefit in that way. It's probably hard to believe that, but I said I'm just here to provide the different perspectives. But what is interesting, Kenny, 11 years ago on his house tour video, when responding back to someone that said, "Beautiful home, you're obviously very talented, very committed to what you do," Kenny said, "Thank you so much for commenting. Yes, I'm committed. It's my passion though, so it doesn't feel like work. I hope to create all these things and more for someone who loves the rustic cowboy style." Now that link there can cross over to what we looked at earlier on eBay with those cowboy style belts. And cowboys in the past having belts anyway. People in general having belts, different styles, and some more dominated by others from certain states in the US, for example. You're wearing jeans, you might have a belt with it and a buckle. Something fancy, personal, creative. And Kenny Veach, the way he is, he could have created something like that, a one-off item or multiple. If they're that hard to come by or you don't come across that many, there might be a good reason for it. You never know, there might be somehow an indirect cross-reference where you do have a genuine artisan called Kenny Veach selling items like that, but then Kenny himself, the real Kenny Veach, may have created his own belts. You never know. Beside that, I looked on here, the query Kenny Veach Webster City, as in the location, likely refers to two different individuals. The name is associated with both a missing hiker and a business in Webster City, Iowa. The hiker Kenny Veach disappeared in Nevada in 2014, whilst a separate individual named Kenny Veach owned a repair shop in Webster City, Iowa. To say owned makes it sound like it more in the past, and Kenny Veach is also in the past too. And further down, to differentiate, missing hiker Kenny Veach, more famous Veach who disappeared November. And that was near Nellis Air Force Base, which is incorrect. It's the Nellis Test Range or Area 51 land. He was a YouTuber known for exploring caves and was an experienced outdoorsman. His disappearance remains unsolved, fueling many theories and online speculation. Notice how it refers to him as exploring caves, more than one, and associated with being a YouTuber. And like how some of us know, way back in the past, he had other hiking videos on his channel, which are now gone. Interesting how some pick up on it. Beside that though, Webster City, Iowa connection. The connection to Webster City is through Kenny Veach's repair shop, which offers vehicle and equipment repair services. Additionally, another reference mentions that Kenny and Debbie Veach owned Veach's Boots and Saddles in Mount Vernon, MO, formerly Webster City, Iowa. There's also a vintage leather belt listed on eBay from a handmade by leather artisan Kenny Veach in Webster City, Iowa, suggesting another individual or business. That's quite interesting. I don't believe in it too much. I'm skeptical, but mentioning that Kenny Veach and his sister Debbie Veach owned Veach's Boots and Saddles. Sounds like a business. I'm going to have a quick look online and see if I can find anything about that. I tried searching about, found the odd article online to do with Veach saddlery, not so much boots, but it looked like it wasn't to do with Kenny, or at least I didn't really see any key names popping up, but Veach Saddlery's post, an actual Facebook page dedicated to it, I found something of interest here. 4 generations of the Veach family. two names do stand out. Most of them here, probably not. So have a quick little read through. You can pause the video if you want. Left to right back, Charlie Beale, son-in-law, George McAllister, Kenny Veachers, Buford Veach, Billy Veach, Monroe Veach, Walter Veach, Benny Veach. As I said, there's people with the same surnames but different families, different blood, not related to the actual Kenny. Peggy Veach, Robertson daughter, Mary Ruth, and so on. We've got a person called Charlie. Interesting. Right, but further down, where it stands out more, and hopefully you can read it, it's towards the bottom, it says Kenny and Debbie Veach own Veach's Boots and Saddles in Mount Vernon, MO, formerly Webster City. That's probably where the AI got it from. That's interesting. Carrie and Laura Veach owns Veach's Custom Leather Goods in, is that Iowa? Any other interesting names? Fourth generation. I'm just trying to look for if it says like Vicky Veach or Raymond Veach, any references like that. Doesn't seem to be the case. And look, there's a photo there, but that looks pretty old, doesn't it? And I don't see any familiar faces there, from my point of view. What's this? 40th anniversary. So this is likely something separate, however, it's just a very strange coincidence. Yeah, this is just, but you know, the reference to saddles, saddlery, boots, rustic, cowboys, and then the belts as well, and Kenny referring in his video being creative and the rustic cowboy look. There's a lot of coincidences going on. At the end of the day, in my opinion, very interesting, the crossovers, the similarities, but in regard to if by any chance Kenny and Debbie were working together at some point to do with saddlery, boots, comes across as a business. And considering that Kenny Veach was supposed to be struggling for money, if running a business, I don't think there'd be the same problems or money struggles. I don't remember Kenny referring to a business, but he was referring to at one point he wanted to create inventions, more practical, out-of-the-box inventions and not just standard clothing or accessories, but you never know. I think that what AI did was they got snippets from online where it mentioned the keywords Kenny and Debbie and associated that with the Kenny Veach case and Kenny's sister known as Debbie Veach. And they probably just, I don't know, combined them together and thought, well, it must mean brother, sister. But that might not be the case in terms of what we did read elsewhere. Nevertheless, it's just a video that needed to be done, ticked off the list. For me to give you my thoughts on the matter, I'd ultimately say my conclusion, if something happened to Kenny Veach unexpectedly and it occurred around the mineshaft, hence his scent ending there, then likely Kenny wouldn't have gone on to then start selling belts or clothing of some sort. He wouldn't have been able to, probably. Taken away, taken out for good. However, if Kenny Veach double-backed on himself to start a new life, the chances of him creating or selling is possible. But under the same name, you could say, doesn't seem possible. If you're starting a new life, you'd probably change your name. Why do you refer to Kenny Veach? But then again, sometimes a person can create a business, a product with a certain name and it might not reflect them. It might reflect someone that they look up to, or it's just a random generated name. Who knows, people can be random at times. But in Kenny's case, portraying someone else, starting a new life, but still living through it, through his life and his name and vision, is worth pointing it out there. I know people say that Kenny Veach could be sat back elsewhere, maybe with some form of money, and just laughing at people that try and look into this case of mystery. But what I would always say is Kenny won't be having the last laugh, because it shouldn't be a game in the first place. Because out in that desert, the Mojave Desert, beyond even just Little Jermay Canyon, beside the M Cave, and beside Kenny's disappearance, there are strange things going on out there, and individual hikers have encountered it themselves. So, even if Kenny didn't experience what others have experienced, and Kenny just thought, right, make up something out there, what he doesn't know, there is really something out there. And if his scent ended at the mine shaft, and that's what led to his disappearance, and he didn't double back on himself, he might have finally faced what he never expected to come across too. It just was a worse outcome for Kenny than it was for other hikers. But in terms of a belt or a buckle, clothing and accessories like that can still link in with the Kenny Veach case, as in, what did Kenny wear? What did he take with him on his final hike? And how does it compare to his previous hike? Major differences or not? Does it stand out? Does he look prepared and organised? Does he actually look like he's fitted and kitted for a proper hike? Or is he underdressed? He doesn't have much items with him because he's not intending on camping and he's not intending on living. That could be for a separate video, but I thought I'd just kind of throw it in on the sideline. But in conclusion, I would simply say it's just a coincidence what we've come across, but a very interesting one. However, depending what happens next, what else is found online and along the way, the more the coincidences, the less likely it's going to be a coincidence, and maybe it's a sign, there's a meaning behind it. But regular things or a handful of stuff needs to occur which links and interlinks with one another for it to possibly be established that way. Look, the only other thing that I will say is I am aware there's probably going to be resistance and people like that, but via requested video, simply giving my thoughts, you can do the same down below in the comment section. Hopefully you found it somewhat interesting. If you want to hit the thumbs up and share the video, that'd be much appreciated. And don't go anywhere, because I do have a very important announcement. Now, on my YouTube channel page, I've done a community post about it with the link provided, or at least I'm going to do so before or after this video. If you haven't checked it out or you don't want to, it's fine. What I'm going to do down below in the comment section is provide to you a link to you want to call it a podcast, an interview, which I participated in with another channel out there. I believe they're called UAP Report. So if you want to check it out, feel free to do so. In regard to what it's about and how long it is, it's a decent length. It's kind of similar to what I did with Casual Conversations with Gloria and Eileen, but this time around it was an updated one. They reached out to me, and just because of the timing and everything, it just felt like it was worth doing and giving a try, because it's not done that often whatsoever. Talking about the case from almost start to present day, what's come about over time, remembering as much as possible the original story of Kenny Veach, the misunderstandings along the way, the thoughts, the theories, the possibilities, and all of that. All in one place. So if you wanted a form of storytelling and learning, and whether you're new to the channel or not, or you need your memory rejogging, it might be for you. So the Kenny Veach podcast interview is now available. Or at least when I last looked, it's available. I word it like that because, like with online and anything out there, things can happen, but at this moment in time, it's available to watch. Be sure to check it. If you want to leave your comments over there, you can do so too. And the link to it is either currently on my channel page, community post, and or in the comment section under this video. I might pin it in the comments so it's easier to find. With that being said, my name's Warlike Ref. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and good night for now.